Everyone, welcome to the third episode of Magic Threads Connection Through String with Fibre Goddess, me. And today I have my first guest with me. I would like to welcome Anna Golladay to the podcast. Anna is a faith leader in Tennessee. And those of you who know me might be a little surprised that my very first guest on the podcast is a Christian faith leader. But Anna is, how do I even start to describe Anna? Anna is one of my dear friends. I met Anna years ago and we became really close really fast to the point that we went on a music cruise together and everyone just assumed we were a couple. So literally, Anna is now my wifey for, you know, certain situations.
Yeah. And both of our husbands are totally fine with it.
Yeah, I believe we were actually called the cutest couple on the boat on that
Yeah.
particular cruise, which
Oh my
I mean,
God.
as you can see, yeah, we were. Anna is a faith leader, as I said, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and she has recently announced her run for Congress, which is pretty big freaking news. And yeah, anything you want to add to my little introduction, Anna?
Um, no, I mean, you got it all right. I'm also a small business owner.
Right.
But yes, I did launch my candidacy for Congress a few months ago, and I'll be running against a eight-time incumbent who really has had this district on lock for a long time. But I'm excited and things are going well. And I think that everything about this life that I've lived has led me to this point. And because of that, I'm not turning away from the scariness that is this opportunity.
Cool. And yes, I actually looked for one of your t-shirts to wear today, but they were all dirty because I wear them constantly. If anyone's seen any of my plethora of political t-shirts, a lot of them are from Anna's business, Bias and Bourbon. So you can
Yes.
check out her business. Yeah, so basically, I did not know after years of friendship that you were a fiber artist and that you were involved in fiber art. So tell me, until you posted your cross stitches on social media a few months ago. And not gonna lie, my very first instinct was, holy shit, I get to have Anna on the podcast now because she's a fiber artist.
Right. I'm not just someone who transfers my designs to Fiber in my graphic t-shirt business, but I'm actually an artist in that way too. Yes, so I was first introduced to cross stitch when I was a young girl. My grandmother and my mother were both cross stitchers and needle pointers. My mom has since become a crochet fanatic, but when I was growing up in the 80s predominantly, we were a cross stitch family. And my mother would buy me kind of a new cross stitch every summer. And so one of the treats that I would have at the end of the school year would be going to our fiber shop and selecting the pattern. And it was one of those kits that was pre-made, right? So you got the kit and the guidelines and all of your threads all together. But I would get to pick which cross stitch I wanted to work on throughout the summer. And as I got older, I was picking larger pieces because I was getting a little quicker at it and could get them done faster. But I started with, really cute little icon-based cross-stitch designs, all designs that were done by other folks and, were just available for purchase en masse. I then put it away for a lot of years. I didn't have the time. I was kind of doing other artistic things in the world. My undergrad degree is in graphic design and illustration, so I'm a painter also by trade, and I love that work. But it is hard to find space for it, and it's difficult to commit to because I want to only paint oversized pieces. I don't do anything compactly. And so I switched back to cross stitch really right before the pandemic. I started picking it up again, not really, I mean, not in preparation for anything, but it ended up being really fortuitous, right? Because I ended up being home a lot during COVID and was just, sitting in front of the TV or sitting outside and would take my cross stitch with me everywhere that I went. As it time went by, I started dabbling with some of my own designs and converting them into cross stitch patterns. Um, for the most part, I still do purchase patterns from other artists, and then buy all the supplies myself. But I have also done a few that are mine. And I have a very distinct theme of cross stitch that I am drawn to, and that is the irreverent, the snarky, the politically incorrect. And so I have one here. This is one that I did a few months ago that says, not today, Satan. And then you'll see the one behind me on the wall is my the biggest piece that I've done to date, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg um, rainbow piece that I have hanging behind me. But yeah, they're all justice centric, all snarky, all irreverent, and I just love finding funny things to cross stitch and then taking the time to wind down in the evenings and actually work on it.
I love that. So I love that you have this history with with it as well, like that it was, you know, passed on to you and
Yeah.
there's this, history with it within your family too, which
Mhm.
as you know, I have with fiber arts in my
Right.
family as well.
Right.
So I really love that. Also,
Mhm.
I mean, I cross stitch a little as well. And if I'm gonna cross stitch, I'm cross stitching exactly what you described. Like all of my cross stitches are either witchy or
Yeah.
sweary and most definitely political in nature. So yeah, I completely appreciate that. Which sort of is a little bit of a segue into my next question for you, which is because one of the things that I want to really focus on in this podcast is connection and
Mhm.
as well as community. So, what does connection mean to you?
It's a very interesting word for me because, as someone who has spent time in a pastoral role as the head of a faith community and also as a community organizer, I think of the world through a series of tentacles or Venn diagrams. I firmly believe that every one of us is connected in some way to the other, whether it is through an intentional bodily somatic connection or whether it is through an emotional spiritual connection. And so connection for me takes on a role in my perspective that allows me a real expansiveness around it. Um, I have friends who will call people in their lives who they don't consider friends, but that they are associated with connections. So they will say, I am like, this person isn't my friend, but I'm connected to them. And they use that as kind of an explainer for friend adjacent, if you will. And that for me has always been curious. I mean, I'm not going to challenge them on it. It's vernacular that works for them. And also, I think that we as humans are more intimately connected than we recognize. And if we truly are a part of a beloved, kind of one breath community, then we have to acknowledge that connection, because what it also does is it humanizes the other in the midst of struggle and strife and anger and disagreement. It's a I think that that is one of the gifts that I bring to running for political office, is that I am conditioned to see the humanity and the genuineness in other folks, even when their ethic or their words or their actions are not matching what I would believe to be safe or wholesome. And so this understanding of connection is one that feels spiritual to me, for those that are listening to the podcast that have a connection to a Christian faith or Christian adjacent. You will, understand that, when God breathed life into others, the ruha of the breath of life is a breath that surrounds all of us, and that is a part of the way that creation is built. And so that really is what informs my understanding of connection and how I operate or attempt to operate in the real world when it comes to folks that I disagree with.
Fair, fair. And I mean, I've said this before on the podcast, and I know we've had this discussion in person before as well, that I do that connection, like literally as well as emotionally and, spiritually, or however else people are feeling connection with each other. The connection is what's going to save us right
It
now.
is.
Like
It
it's
is.
it's not going to be like, I know you're running for Congress, but it's not going to be our government that saves us right
It
now.
will not be. It will not be. There will be nothing about me as an individual that changes the trajectory of the life for folks in the United States. And also, I wouldn't be doing this if I weren't committed to policy that actually humanizes people, in the face of systems that were set up to destroy them. So both things can be true at the same time.
Yes. And I think we've had this conversation in the past too, where you are what's the word I shall you are much more diplomatic in interacting with as you said, people who you may not see eye to eye with,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
lots of people have always told me that I should go into politics, and that is the reason that I will not, because my face doesn't lie, and I I just I'm at the
I
point
mean,
right.
I'm not great at it. I can be good
You're
at it.
you're
I can
better than
code
I
switch
am,
in
my
that
dear.
way. But yeah, you're right. It is difficult. And I think a lot of that has come from my work in the church. I mean, yes, there is a in many ways unfortunate position that a lot of us have had to take, especially as women, of the kind of go along to get along mentality within cultures where men are assumed, there's an assumed superiority regardless of the worth of it. And so I think that that has always been a part of my understanding of the way that I move in spaces. And also, I am an unashamed badass who like isn't gonna take crap off of people. And when I'm in the streets, either in my role as a community activist, or I also am trained in protest chaplaincy, so I spend a lot of time in the streets, doing work that allows for trauma-informed care for those that are in the midst of protests. I am I am not ashamed to speak my mind, and also allow for others to do the same, with the level of respect that I would expect from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a white woman too, that comes with a privilege that, I've spoken about that before. Just even in, small community ways here, like I feel I not only feel that I have a that it's necessary for me to speak, but that there is privilege in that I won't be punished in the same way that
Right.
other people might be. So yeah, yeah,
Unfortunate, but it exists. It's
yeah.
there. And then it's incumbent on those of us that recognize that we have it to use it wisely.
Exactly, exactly. But I want to get back to you just spoke a little bit about your, protest chaplaincy and just your social activism. And
Yeah.
I want to get back to the concept of community. And because I
Mhm.
feel like you have maybe your hands in a few different communities.
Mhm.
And what does community mean for you, and how do you feel like community kind of maybe not dictates, but directs your work, and especially probably your, run in politics right now.
Right. Yeah, I have so I think I became aware of the power of community at a pretty young age. I didn't realize it, but as I've kind of looked back on the work that I've done in the world and the way that I've kind of moved through spaces, my family was a working poor family who found themselves often in need of help, but not in need of an expansive amount of help that I perceived others to need. So, for instance, I would have friends at school who others might identify as the poor kids, or the kids that don't have lunch money. And I always knew myself to be one of those kids that was teetering on the edge of that. Knowing that there were conversations in the morning with my parents about running down the street to my grandmother's house to get some cash so that I had a way to eat, versus being identified as one of those kids in class. And I think that when we are um, when we are encouraged and in some ways forced to identify those that are working in our best interest and those that we can rely on in at a very young age, we identify and acknowledge community differently than others who have the ability to do the majority of the things that they need to do by themselves or with the support of one or two other folks. And so um, I grew up in a little town. My mom was a school teacher. My dad ran my family's business, and I was the kid that I was the connector kid in my neighborhood. Like I was the kid who organized the bike races around the block, and the kid that like gathered everyone at the park for a meeting of the neighborhood kids to see, what play we were gonna put on that summer in someone's driveway. And I just naturally found myself drawn to bringing folks together. There, as I got older, I began to recognize the power dynamic that comes with that kind of community leadership, and forced myself to divest from that. There is an unspoken assumption that comes with people who just kind of show up as leaders in spaces. I recognize that when I put my collar and my stole on. I recognize it when show up as a congressional candidate now. People treat me differently than they did when I was a community activist or someone that was just kind of there to support a cause. But my understanding of community has while deeply formed by who I was as a child, has evolved into something that I recognize as not a benefit of the way that we live, but a necessity to the way that we live. And I think the biggest disservice that folks can do for themselves is to not tap in and identify who their community is and how they can be in community with one another. We have become a society where you might only see your neighbors at a neighborhood association meeting or waving to them on your way in and out of the grocery store. I was brought up in a family whose door was always open, where neighbors were always coming and going, and we were borrowing from one another, and we were a community of folks who relied on each other to have all of the things that we needed versus relying on a family member to provide all of the things that we needed. And so this understanding of we have a joke in my friend group here in Chattanooga that and we'll often send each other a text and say, we have really good news. We just bought a pressure washer. Or we just bought a new grill because there is this assumption within this, group of 6 to 10 couples that hang out and that do life together that what is one of ours is all of ours. And even though we aren't communal in the way that we are physically living with one another, we are highly communal in the way that we are interacting and engaging with one another. And to your point earlier, Jen, about how you believe that connection is the thing that's going to save us, I say the same thing with community. And I use it's for me, it's community and it's communication. And both of them have the root of the word being held in common. And I'm an unashamed Acts 2 Christian, which is the story where everyone pooled their resources and everyone held together everything in common, and that was the way that they were able to survive. And I want to embody that in real life. And I really do think that when we acknowledge the way that we need one another, we are better for it. And that is why I think community is one of the most essential things that we have going for us. And it's also one of the things that we are losing most quickly in a society that has become as insular as ours is.
As soon as you started talking about it, I was like, that was exactly what I was going to bring up was how
Yeah.
in our current society, we are so individualistic and
Yeah.
so, um, the word freaking perimenopause, the word is leaving
Mhm.
my head. But yeah,
Yeah.
like everyone is just focused on their own needs and
Mhm.
fair enough. Everyone is just trying to survive right now. Like it's
Yeah.
the world is on fire. It's a freaking disaster out there. Like I don't
Correct.
even want
Correct.
to
Yeah.
like,
No judgment or shame for any
yeah.
of that. I mean, we are a people who have had to figure out ways to bob and weave and survive because the systems are set up to destroy us. They are not set up to support us. But also because of that, I think we have forgotten that we are collectively stronger. More people are more powerful together. One person cannot topple a car, but 12 people together can very easily turn it on its side. And if we are to look at systems and at the ways that those systems are engaging, then we have to be willing to do this together. And we have to get out of our way and get out of our video games and get out of our social media feeds and, get out of our Netflix binging and sit on our porches and walk the neighborhood and curate opportunities for all of us to be together in ways that don't look forced, but look like just a natural iteration of people that live amongst other people.
Yeah. I yeah. I'm just sitting here nodding for those of you just listening. I'm like, yeah, mm-hmm. And I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast too, is just talk, like just have people talking about this and have people talking about, because I think there's other community, like there's other ways to make community too, right? Like even if you're too scared, like you're as an introvert,
Absolutely.
as an introvert, going out and talking to my neighbors, honestly, Anna, I just I love,
I mean, I get it.
don't
I
get
get
me
it. And
wrong,
I
my
No, and I also recognize, let me just acknowledge that, my comments about, getting outside and walking around and doing things are also very ableist. And like I recognize that there are ways that we have to be very intentional about community building that take into account all of our collective fears and disabilities and the way that we have othered others.
Mhm.
But it is in the curiosity and in the creativity of how to cultivate community in those ways that I think we actually find the magic. Um, Sometimes the things that feel the hardest to do are the things that work out the best because unexpectedly you have manifested a community of people that were very unexpected and very like unlikely, and now together you are one body. I mean, I think about I'm a critic of Meta. I'm a critic of Facebook and Instagram, and also I think about Facebook when it was in its infancy, and in the first 6 to 8 years of Facebook, when groups were popping up of like-minded interests from across the world, and there were people that were helping teach one another to cook in groups. There were mom groups who were helping raise a body of collective children through the feedback they were giving. There were communities that were solving unsolved murders in ways that were unexpected. That time has passed us by, and so I always remain curious in the what's next. Are you in Reddit threads or Discord channels that allow yourself to, be curious and find a group of folks from across the world that you can engage with? Or are you in a neighborhood app that have the ability to talk about a lost cat or a pile of trash that got left on the street, and you're able to kind of figure out a way to collectively um, solve those issues. There are ways to do it.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
we have lost sight of, I think, the creative nature of building community, and that's the piece that I think we really need to get back.
Yeah, I would concur. And I think for, I've talked a lot about just like different types of communities and different, my partner will often joke with me about my online friends, because I'll talk about someone and they're like, "Oh, who's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, they're one of my like they live in the online world."
Right.
And it's always fun when I get to meet those people in real life. But there is that, like you mentioned, there are those communities, and they're just as valid, and they're just as, it's connection. I feel like connection in any way that we can absolutely make it. Like for myself, I have fiber arts connections, like
Mm,
with knitters, with cross
right.
stitchers, with however, the whole plethora of fiber artists. And as and I do feel like a responsibility, which is why I'm so outspoken in my social media and stuff, in even in those really small, talked with a neighbor on the street, but you can bring up, issue, like there are always those ways to bring up the important issues within those, but you can't just, without having that connection first, you can't make, like, those conversations
Not
can't happen.
manufactured. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like if I go down the street holding a protest sign, that's fantastic, but I'm probably not going to be able to have like a really great conversation with someone. Not saying, don't get me wrong, protesting is absolutely valid and I am out there as well, but like if it's just me walking down the street alone with, you know, it's not going to be the same as like I'm thinking about last summer. I spin, as you know, and I would just sit out on my front step spinning during Tour de Fleece, which is a spinning thing that happens during Tour de France. And I had so many people, which took me out of my comfort zone as an introvert, just approaching me as I'm spinning on my front porch. Like I had an unhoused man like stop on his bicycle, like circled the block to come back and talk to me about what I was doing because he was just so fascinated. And it's just those, like met a couple of other fiber people in the neighborhood. And, I host a fiber arts night at my local community center. And it's those like, you know, I feel like people have this idea of community that isn't necessarily what you don't have to be out there like, you know, there are gatherers, which is you, which is fantastic, but we all already have communities that we can start making change within. Um, yeah, I guess I feel like I was up on I was the one preaching there for a second, but
No, no, no,
feel
no.
like
I mean, your pedestal is equally as valid.
but it's true, like we already have these communities and it's like, it's that whole thing about like, yeah, like no one's going to change your racist uncle's mind if no one's talking to him about it at the Thanksgiving table, right? Like we have a
Exactly.
responsibility to be having conversations about social justice within the communities and
Yeah.
within. Yeah.
And the anecdotes are, I mean, they are overused and they can feel trite, but it is true that we have more in common than we don't. Um, we are people whose differences are put on display, but whose likenesses are never revealed. And when it comes down to it, I still continue to believe that every person wakes up every morning and desires a place where they are safe, a place where their families can thrive and be healthy, a place where they can afford sustenance in the form of both food and water, and that they want to maintain a sense of shelter or a sense of, security over their body and the people that they coexist with. When it all comes down to it, that existence is the majority of the lives that we lead. We work because those things come also as a result of work. We are in community because those things come as a result of community. But this 10 to 15% of us, of my being, that feels very passionately about, my alphabet issues, should not be the thing that breaks my connection to someone else who I have 80 to 85% in common with, but their alphabet issues are different than mine. And I recognize the triteness and the like the us presumption that feels like it's such an easy thing to say, but such a difficult thing to do. But I still contend that we are better as we are better together, and that my value and ability to succeed is bound up in your value and abilities to succeed. And that if that is how we focus our lives, if that is how we live our lives, then the fact that open that a prospective voter opens the door and wants to, have a 30-minute conversation with me about my position on um, trans kids in sports versus a 30-minute conversation with me on the 85% that we have in common that we neither one of us is getting help with, we're missing the point. We're missing the boat on what community really means. And I am never going to affirm anyone, you know, putting anyone's life at risk, putting, someone's being in question. And also, I think that we can have those conversations with people in ways that are constructive and that remind them of the humanity of others in ways that doesn't discard them as people and ultimately then doing the same thing to them that they have done to those that we are supporting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I think you're better at that than I am. Because immediately when you were talking, I was like, yeah, and the I think the difference is for a lot of people, and like I said, there are many reasons for this happening, is that, people wake up. I'm waking up and I'm hoping all of that for my family, but I'm also hoping for that. I'm wishing for all of those things for every family
Sure,
in the world,
sure.
which I think is kind of maybe the differences between some, you know, facets, especially of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
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 Um, well, thanks for coming on and chatting about
Thanks
all
for
of this.
inviting me.
I love seeing your face. We don't
I
get to see each
know.
other
We'd
very
only get to
often.
see each other once or twice a year in
I
person, so it's nice to connect even if it's just over a camera.
I know, and unfortunately, we probably won't be getting that next year
I
because,
know.
as you know, I'm, avoiding travel to the US when it doesn't feel
Can't
safe
say I blame you.
or and that's fair. We've had this discussion too. So I want to end all of my podcasts on a question that kind of because I feel like we got a little heavy in our conversation today, as as we always do when
As
we
you and I always do, exactly. Give us an espresso martini and we will solve every problem of the world.
right, especially at 2 a.m. Yeah, exactly. But what I want to end all of my podcasts with is asking you about, as you know, I'm a pop culture kind of fanatic. I love music. Anna is also part of my music community, which is how we
Yeah,
met. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. We actually met on a music cruise. Yeah, I love live music, as anyone who's been following me knows. Um, but do you have a guilty like pop culture pleasure that you maybe don't let people know because there might be a little judgment for it?
I do. I do. And see, now it's not a secret. It's going to be, public consumption. Um, I love reading gay romance novels. I would always prefer to read a queer romance story than a cis hetero romance story. And I don't know if that's because of the, assumptions that there's a difference when really there isn't, or if it's simply because I feel like, queer folks fought for so long to have their love and their humanity acknowledged in a way that feels as reciprocal as cishet folks. And so I love a gay romance novel. And in fact, I had read all, and I mean all, of the male hockey romance novels before anyone ever heard of a Netflix series by the same name.
Fair, fair. I just want to, as will shock you, I completely agree. I mean, it's not a secret. I love me some smut. I love a smutty, not, I love a smutty romance. The only reason that I hadn't read, Heated Rivalry, which we all
Hmm.
know we're talking
Yeah.
about. The
Yeah.
only reason that I hadn't read those books is because I've been sort of off of hockey for the past however many years. It just because I couldn't, yeah, it just the NHL and professional hockey just basically just pissed me off and upset
I
me
get
so
it.
much that I drew away from it, and that included any of like the hockey novels, hockey books, hockey romance,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So that's the only reason that I hadn't read those books. And now, interestingly enough, those that series and now the books, because I have also now read all of them, um, has brought me back to my love for hockey. And
Oh,
I
yay.
know. I am fully in on the PWHL now. I am
Yes.
like a total
Yes.
fangirl, and I
My
am,
husband and I have started watching so that whenever they broadcast PWHL here in the States, we will hop on and watch those games. We are also big hockey fans, which is not as common in the South. Part of the southern part of the United States, but that's another thing that that our collective group of friends have in common is that we are music lovers and we are hockey lovers, and it always gives us a lot to talk about, regardless of what we're paying attention to at that moment.
yeah, that's fair. Well, thanks. I love meeting another smutty romance. Well, not meeting, but
Yeah,
learning about another smutty romance lover,
yeah.
especially in the queer world. I love like if I can. My issue is there just isn't enough of them. There needs to be more. Because
Well, thankfully, I don't have the chance to read as much as I would like to.
yeah,
So I feel like I can still get to all of them because I'm not like devouring one in one night and then trying to find the next one for the next night.
and
I
that's my
taking my
problem.
time because I don't have the time to spend on it.
That's fair. Yeah, I read a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's it's a problem. There needs to be more. So attention authors out there, bring
fair.
us bring us some more. All right. Well, thank you so much for yeah, stopping by, and we'll
Thanks for
talk
inviting me.
soon. And good luck on your Congress run. I know I'll be
Thank
watching
you.
from the sidelines, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.